Welcome into the latest episode of Betting the Pitch. I'm your host, the real_G Warner, on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. This is a European soccer edition. We're going through midweek matches in the English Premier League. There are some makeup matches there. La Liga have a regularly scheduled or has a regularly scheduled midweek to catch up to the other leagues. You got Liga, some makeup matches. Then we have the Coppa Italia final in Italy. If you're not a member of my Patreon, check it out. Patreon.com/real_G Warner. Best spot to get all my plays, leans, write-ups, everything across all sports. And if you are listening on Apple Podcast, well, you could be watching this live on Twitter. I appreciate everyone coming in there. But if you are on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, please leave a 5-star review. It's huge for the search rankings. And if you're not subscribed on YouTube, make sure you get that done. I'll be going through each of the leagues that have midweek matches, probably an abridged version, because we're not getting full match lists. But we'll be doing another podcast this weekend. Have a baseball podcast coming out with at A Brooks Bets tonight. So stay tuned for that. Another good reason to subscribe to the channel. So let's start where the money is in the English Premier League. We have a Tuesday matchup of Tottenham hosting Manchester City. Pretty big for the title race in the English Premier League. Tottenham currently 1.5 goal underdog at home. Just about split both ways, a little bit more to the Manchester City side. Over under here is 3 3/4, and it is juiced very heavily to over. It might see this one get to 4. And based on kind of what are these teams playing for, Manchester City, of course, can get closer to the Premier League title. Really, they've had their own destiny in their own hands for a long time now. And a road trip to Tottenham, who are one of the top teams in the English Premier League, focused on Champions League position. But then again, Tottenham have been playing so poorly. We're behind to Burnley this weekend, and we're very, very fortunate, I felt, to come back from behind and take all 3 points. It ended up, I think, a 4-match winless run, or maybe a 4-match losing streak. Pretty much Tottenham have been a disaster. We've seen it reflected in the media interviews done by their manager, Ange Postecoglou, who just seems to me to not really have either the team for what he's going to run, or I just don't think his strategy is going to work long term. It worked at Celtic because they were better than everyone else. It's not the case with Tottenham in the most expensive roster league in the world. I'm not sure if that's the most eloquent way to put that, but regardless, total here is 3 3/4, which is very high, but it's actually lower than I made it. It's hilarious. We have a total coming up in Spain a little bit later in the show below 2. This one is literally about to hit 4. The problem here is if you want to back Tottenham at home, you know that they're going to give up a ton of chances, and Manchester City are the best in the world. You could argue best in the team in the world, but also best, arguably, about taking their chances. So, I think that means if you're backing Tottenham here, you need them to score a bunch of goals. And why would we believe that to happen, especially as they love to fall behind, which is really not a good indicator. It's really hurt Liverpool a lot of the season. I just think in general, Tottenham are a team that I've been looking to bet against them this weekend successfully. And as I'm kind of limited to only underdogs and unders in this sport, I do play overs occasionally and favorites never. It just doesn't give me a lot to do in this matchup. I think if anything, I like over 3 3/4 because it should be a pretty wide open game. And Ange Postecoglou has pretty much proven that he will never change his strategy. So 1.5 is bigger than I made it. So I guess that's should also make my list, but I got to say it's not my favorite match on this eventual episode. Moving to Wednesday, we have Brighton hosting Chelsea. Currently, Brighton 1/2 goal underdog at home with all the juice. Over under is 3.5, juice all the way to under. And this is an interesting one because Chelsea have been roaring up the table trying to get into a European position, huge for their financial fair play and financial state, and trying not to sell Conor Gallagher because he's a full profit type of player coming through their youth team. Brighton on the other side are playing a lot of young players, have started to, I think, move into trying to prepare for next year and have done that for a while. And the results have certainly dropped. So they were not anywhere near as good as they were last season that got them the Europa League. It's Roberto De Zerbi, the manager of Brighton. He is an all-out attacking type of manager. When They're ahead. He defends by attacking the opposition goal, and that does potentially put Brighton some concern here, especially with Chelsea and their goal scoring ability. Chelsea's defense has been really problematic. I do feel like it's in pretty good shape against a Brighton side that really haven't shown much offensively in a while. Which is about to be weird when I say that. I'm more, I think, interested in over 3.5 here than I am in the home underdog. I just don't think we've seen it from Brighton for a while. Certainly at home, getting a half of a goal, a result, a draw, or a win will cash for you, and that's certainly a nice thing to have against Chelsea. But I think I've kind of stepped away from my try to fade Chelsea at all costs. It seems like Pochettino, I'm not sure if he's a great manager of this type of team, but they've certainly improved a lot, and they're scoring so many goals that it makes it really hard to want to be against them with a team that can't really score at this point. Last but not least, on this English Premier League shortened, abridged version, as we'll then move to La Liga and a full slate there in Spain, we have Manchester United, a quarter goal underdog at home to Newcastle. Wow. All the juice on Manchester United, and certainly plenty of money has been coming on Newcastle, pushing them from a pick 'em with more of the juice, which was a surprise initially to then a road favorite, which is especially funny considering their huge struggles, especially away from home, away from St. James's Park. Over under is 3.5, just all the way to over. At this point, I don't really know what to say with this one. Manchester United, of course, I think if you're looking for line value, a quarter goal underdog at home to a really bad road team makes a lot of sense. But their play has been horrible. Their manager is clearly above his pay grade here. It's amazing that he's, as far as I know, still being retained for next season. But that will probably be a short leash if it even makes it that long. Newcastle, on the other side, I think have been playing more of a conservative style, protecting their defense away from home, and it's allowed their attackers to look and shine a lot better because when you're not conceding 3 goals, it's a lot easier to win 2-1 or something like that. Not, I still don't believe in Newcastle. I haven't this entire season. Away from home, it's been the best place. I think at home, Newcastle are still very dominant, and that's been something that I've had to learn. But I think Manchester United is still my interest here, getting that quarter of a goal. And again, I think I lean over 3.5, which is probably weird. Shout out Joe Dollar. Thank you for all your support and being a Patreon subscriber. You're probably not used to me liking 3 straight consecutive overs on an English Premier League side or card or any sort of place in general. But defense has been very limited and lacking for a lot of these teams. And it doesn't really seem like late in the season with not much to play for. I guess you could argue Chelsea certainly do, Manchester United certainly, I mean, Manchester City certainly do, Tottenham certainly do. I mean, there's a lot still on the line, but feels like a lot of these players have their focus more on what hotel they're going to book in Santorini this summer, hopefully on the Caverna, but who knows really what they're doing and where they're going. So for my best bet on this episode, man, there's so many choices here and they're all in directions that I'm not used to. I think I'm going to go and just dig my heels into a good performance for Manchester United at home. It makes me want to vomit, but there we go. Manchester United, I'll take that quarter of a goal on a home team that I don't really know what scenario they're really fighting for at this point. I mean, of course, to finish as high up the table as possible and try to end the year on a good note. But it's really, I think, going against the Newcastle side that on the road, I think, still has problems. Moving now to Spain, we have a big card here. Everyone playing, as this was a scheduled midweek after I think they pretty much a makeup for when they took the entire weekend off for the Copa del Rey final. Don't know that that's a great idea because none of the other leagues do it that way, but I guess it does make it more of a spectacle. We'll start here on Tuesday, the 14th of May, recording this live from Dallas, Texas, live if you're watching on Twitter currently at @the_real_G Warner. Soon to come later, as soon as it uploads with a little bit more production value. Hopefully you all have enjoyed that. But it'll be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube. Osasuna currently a pick'em right now to Mallorca. Over/under is 1 3/4. This is the match I was referring to earlier compared to the nearly 4 goals offered in that Tottenham Manchester City match. But Osasuna a pick'em, slight favorite here, 2 cents difference at BetOnline. There's a link in the podcast descriptions on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube. If you're not a member at BetOnline or SportsBetting.ag, their sister site, they'll give you free money for a first-time deposit. So go take advantage of that. Follow the links and get extra money. Osasuna, a disastrous run of form. Finally, things look like they were turning the correct direction. They had 2-0 lead on the road at San Mamés at Athletic Club Bilbao last weekend, and gave that away with a really tough goalkeeper mistake where he caught a ball, dropped or kind of ran into his own defender, bounced off his shoulder, was put right in by the Buffalo Asia Via Libre for the equalizer. And I think the performance, certainly Osasuna can take from some positives from that, but they've been a disaster. Their manager is leaving, and they look like a team that is in big trouble. And honestly, could be one of those that could be pipped or picked or tipped for relegation next season. Check in with me in a couple months, and I'm doing La Liga episodes. Might be one of those plays I'm interested there. Osasuna, I don't really. They're mid-table. They don't have much to worry about. Mallorca with a huge win this weekend puts them in a good position to potentially be safe from relegation. A Cadiz victory certainly does complicate things a little bit at the bottom of the table. Happened last weekend as well. Mallorca side, I mean, we know they're going to play defensive football. That's what they're going to do. We don't have the two that I'd like to go under with, because these are two teams that shouldn't have much offense, I don't think. And Mallorca, until they're 1000% safe, they are playing defensive football and still might anyway afterwards. So nothing for me to do on this early one on this Tuesday, May 14th. But we'll move on to the next matchup. And we have Real Madrid hosting Alaves. Currently, Real Madrid a 2-goal favorite at home. All the juice on Alaves over under is 3.25. Juice very heavily to under. This was 1.75 earlier, so we've moved to a 2 here, though a very juiced one on Alaves. They had a come from behind equalizer, grabbed a draw in the last waning seconds last Friday. Big result for them, but honestly, Alaves aren't playing for much. Real Madrid have clinched La Liga and rotated pretty significantly for this weekend's match. Didn't really seem to matter, as they just beat everybody, it seems. So I imagine that we probably, because Real Madrid are trying to keep everyone as in tune as possible for the Champions League final coming up. That's their last, I think, trophy opportunity, of course, with the last box to tick on a great season. Alaves have been really good. They're going to play defensively. They're going to try to take what's one of a few chances. They've been playing pretty well lately. So seeing 2 goals is gigantic. And along those lines, I like under 3.25, because they're not going to try to play a shootout with Real Madrid at the Bernabeu. I am a little bit concerned about Alaves going on the road, or really anyone going to the Bernabeu, but at this point, that's my interest. I do like Alaves getting what feels like too big of a number at this point, and a nice push on a 2-goal loss. Girona then hosts Villarreal. Currently, Girona a 3/4 goal favorite with almost all the juice over unders 3.75. Juice almost all the way to under. This is a big one for Girona at the top of the table. If they can finish in second place, they get the automatic invitation to the Super Coppa in Saudi Arabia. Big for them. Big money grab, and also can prevent Barcelona, their Catalonian rival, from having it. Probably really bad for La Liga if Barcelona don't finish there and miss out on the millions of euros that they're paid for going to Saudi Arabia, and hopefully avoiding any sort of confrontations with their government. But Villarreal came off, I mean, a really poor performance this weekend, took a tough red card. I think they've been on a really good run of form, but then really struggled with Sevilla, or maybe the red card might have been 2 matches ago, but ultimately Villarreal have been kind of heading the wrong direction towards the end of this season. The difference here is Girona's their profile, their club payroll far below what Villarreal had been, because Villarreal were competing in Europe. Girona were a potential relegation side, and then had an incredible season. Mainly due to, I think, manager plus some great players, plus being part of the City group. I think that speaks for itself. It does feel like Villarreal are a pretty big underdog here, though, so I like that 3/4 of a goal, and I also like the under 3.75, because that kind of plays into that underdog counterattacking style that Villarreal will end up employing. What I'm concerned about with an under, though, even a gigantic 3.75, is Girona, similar to the Brighton and Hove Albion type of style. They defend by attacking, and they will be attacking throughout, and that does concern me against a Villarreal side that definitely has some firepower. We've seen Alexander Soloth struggle in the past, but really dominate this season, scoring a ton of goals. That's probably my biggest interest there is that side. Moving to Wednesday, Rayo Vallecano, a 1-goal favorite to Granada. Currently, almost all the juice on Granada on the road. Over under is 2.25. Juice all the way to over. Rayo with a trip to Valencia this weekend. They are one of those teams that Cadiz are trying to catch for that last salvation spot. Rayo's offense has been disastrous, non-existent, another word for it. The defense has not been good either, but Granada already relegated. As the ESPN commentators this weekend said, their best player is currently playing for Bayern Munchen, but not really playing that much. And Brian Zaragoza, who was purchased and then left mid-season, and kind of basically pretty much made Granada destined to be relegated. But I think I'm most interested in the full goal of insurance is a lot, especially I do like backing already relegated teams. Once they're over the shock of it, they didn't perform very well this weekend, but against Real Madrid, I'm not really sure that there's a lot expected there. Lean to under 2.25 though, because I also believe that Rayo Vallecano are not going to score many goals. Moving to Sevilla hosting Cadiz in a really, really big battle at the bottom. Sevilla, not a ton to play for at this point, but got a good win. I think finishing the season on a pretty good note. Maybe Quique Sanchez Flores, their manager, is trying to find a way to keep his post, though I don't think he's really a fit long term, but he's stabilized them, and maybe that's what they're looking for. Sevilla, half a goal favorite at home, more juice on Cadiz on the road. Over under is 2.5, juice all the way to under. And this is one of those huge motivation differences. Cadiz need a win to try to stay in the league. They were very aggressive early against Getafe this weekend, took a lead and held on for dear life late. I imagine that's probably the same type of strategy, though Cadiz got a penalty to end up taking the lead, and ridiculous challenge by Getafe's Dakanam Janae. Again, I mean, that's literally the story of his career. It's amazing that, I guess, as a club captain previously, maybe they keep him around because they like him or he's a nice guy or something. But geez, incredible, especially as a Getafe backer this weekend. Thankfully, the under did come through to escape with a split. But Cadiz, they are gonna give it their all. Cadiz to Sevilla. I looked actually to making that trip when I went to Spain a couple years ago, and it's really not that far. So there should be a lot of yellow in those stands. Sevilla, I'm sure they're fans. I mean, literally day of the match, I bought tickets in a pretty good section. And that was when Sevilla were at home to Levante, which I guess was like worst team in the league and wasn't the end of the season. But I would think the attitude and interest in Sevilla then when they were in Champions League was a much different type of scenario. But c'est la vie. Moving to Cadiz, they're going to go in and try to make this defensive, and also they need to win this match. So the half of a goal underdog feels probably appropriate based on circumstance. I don't love backing must wins and needs, but certainly it seems that there's a big motivation difference, and ultimately a draw on the road will not be enough for Cadiz. It does worry me for late sending their goalkeeper up. But I think under 2.5 is also very interesting to me there as well. Getafe then hosts Atletico Madrid. Speaking of the devil, Getafe, a half a goal underdog at home. All the juice on Atleti on the road. Over under is 2.25. Juice more to the over. Incredibly poor performance from Atletico Madrid at home at the Wanda Metropolitano, at home against Celta de Vigo. Honestly, looked like they were going to concede a counterattacking goal and lose at home when they're trying to really clinch their Champions League place. It looks relatively safe at this point. Athletic Club with a really tough draw, and then have to go to Celta de Vigo fighting relegation, who we'll talk to next, or talk about next. Still feels like Getafe, they don't have a lot to play for. I mean, their second half performance is a lot better than the first, though the first was really disappointing. I think Getafe at this point, just like, I don't really know necessarily what to do with them. They are going to play defensively, so I think my biggest interest is probably to under 2.25 here. Atleti has been really struggling away from home, which also makes that half of a goal probably worth it as well. Getafe's lost a lot of their attackers. They were scoring a ton of goals early in the season. That was going to dry up, and then dried up precipitously when I guess that's probably an oxymoron there. It just dried up like a desert. And I feel like this is a good position for Atletico Madrid to go on the road and try to play better, but they have not played well on the road at all this season. So I don't blame anyone for wanting to back Getafe there. Last but not least, on Wednesday, we have Celta de Vigo hosting Athletic Club Bilbao. Celta, a pick 'em with more juice right now. Over unders 2.5, juice more to the under. Celta de Vigo, they are fighting relegation, like I said. Were in the match and really suffered from a great save by Jan Oblak on a counterattack earlier after multiple counterattacks that could have put Celta ahead and really made them put them towards safety or put them in a safe position not to be relegated this year. Celta seem to be fighting that every season, and somehow surviving like the last club every single year. Athletic Club, they are in pretty good position for Europa League. They're trying to get Champions League. That's probably still on their minds, but hasn't really worked out very well. And welcome, the Yawns are back at the Real underscore G Warner. It's usually a late night thing, but I guess on this morning of May 14th. Here in Dallas, Texas, at least. Probably not morning across this world, obviously. But Celta's the side I want here. I don't really want to back them at Pick'em. Athletic Club, I think, are going to go. And I mean, they've been so much better at finishing chances this year. I imagine probably they'll be one of those teams that revert to potentially finishing lower than their XG, because I imagine they're higher than it this season. Biggest interest I think here is just not seeing a lot of goals. Celta playing really tight and probably trying to take a lead and then kill the match, or at least put themselves in a position to not let Athletic Club use their pace to run at them. So I think biggest interest right now is in that. I guess it's Athletic Club because they're technically on the road, and they've lowered juice to win this match or pick them. So go under 2.5 on the best bet. Last couple matches or 3 matches on Thursday, May 16th. We've Las Palmas, a half a goal underdog to Real Betis. Over under is 2.5. Juiced all the way to under, almost all the way. Las Palmas have been a disaster. Were able to escape with a single goal loss to cash the under, but didn't score this weekend. Performances have been really poor. They have been sinking like a stone all the way down towards the relegation position, from honestly being in a European discussion just a couple of months ago. But that's what happens when you don't win any matches down the stretch. And I feel like they are in big trouble for next season. I wonder what's going to happen with their manager, Pimienta, who was not expected to keep them up. But he's been clashing with players, and it just hasn't really been a good time. Real Betis fighting with Real Sociedad for that Europa League spot, and it's important for their club and their kind of trajectory. Probably makes sense they're half a goal favorite on the road. Las Palmas just, I mean, even at home, trying to get a result seems really tough. I think I need to get a 3/4 of a goal, just so at least they lose by a single goal. You only lose half of a unit there. And they did cash the under, so I guess that was a profitable 2 wagers this past weekend. Biggest interest here, I think, is under 2.5, potentially betting against Real Betis' offense, which I don't really trust, and certainly betting against Las Palmas, who protect their net by possessing the ball, but don't do much with that offensively. Moving next to Almeria, hosting Barcelona. Currently, Almeria, 1.25 goal underdog at home, more juice than Barca on the road. Over under is 3.5, juiced more to the under. This is a big deal. Almeria already relegated. Big deal for Barca, though, because they need second place to finish in that Saudi Arabia tournament. Almeria, they've been, I think, very competitive, and I really like what I've seen from them down the stretch while they were fighting relegation, fighting it all season, I guess, but while they were on the brink, playing really hard, and honestly, I think were a lot better than the results this season, but just a lot of things that didn't go well. And then once you're facing the long streak or longest streak in the Liga of not winning, I think it gets harder and harder to end up turning that ship around. So interested in Almeria getting that goal and a quarter. Also like under 3.5, though unders with Barcelona are very, very problematic because they make so many mistakes. I think that plays into a big underdog at home in their last match in La Liga. Maybe second to last match, but probably last match at this point in the season. Los Hijos del Desierto, the Sons of the Desert, I think will put out a great performance. Should see a ton of Barcelona fans, of course, but should be a pretty big crowd, I think, from Amelia at home. And last but not least, Real Sociedad host Valencia. Currently, Sociedad a 3/4 goal favorite at home with almost all the juice. Over under is 2.25. She's almost all the way to under. Valencia haven't been scoring goals at all. A great goalkeeper. Real Sociedad are famous for not putting the ball in the back of the net either, despite having lots of chances. We saw them win a Champions League group with very few goals scored. So I think my biggest interest there is in under 2.25. But for my best bet from from La Liga before we get to the Coppa Italia final. I'm going to go with, I'll go Cadiz under 2.5 goals. I think there's a huge discrepancy in what teams are fighting for. So now we'll move to the Coppa Italia final. Atalanta hosting Juventus. Juventus, big matchup. This will be played in Rome, in the Stadio Olimpico in Roma. Atalanta currently a pick'em with almost all the juice right now. And regulation over under is 2.25. She's pretty heavily to under, and surprisingly to lift the trophy at BetOnline. Atalanta an underdog plus 105 to Juventus a minus 130. Juve coming in off a disastrous performance at home to Salernitana, which just really furthers the line of disastrous performances back to back to back. Really ever since they lost to Inter a couple months ago and saw that Scudetto was going to be tough for them to avenge or to kind of turn over and win that way. They've had a disastrous run of form. Manager looks like he should be out, but doesn't seem like that's been confirmed just yet. Probably trying to get Thiago Motta to come in from Bologna, and that's not confirmed as far as I've heard. It actually sounds like he's going abroad from Italia, but I think in general, Atalanta is the side I want here at Pick'em with almost all the juice. That's probably too expensive for me. So my biggest interest is probably in under 2.25 in terms of the game lines. But really, I think Atalanta to lift the trophy plus 105 is my biggest interest and my best bet. They're coming off a tough match with Roma, a big battle for Champions League. And they are in Europa League final, which also gives them a potential berth for Champions League. They win that final against Bayer Leverkusen. Plus, they have this, which will guarantee them Europa League, which they pretty much already have locked up. You could argue there's maybe some questions about Gasperini, the Atalanta manager, and whether he's going to stick around. But I think in general, I want the team that's been playing so much better. Atalanta have been great. Tempted to want to back them next season, but I'm certainly worried about Italian Coop miners leaving and a bunch of other big important pieces leaving the club, as that seemed to happen the last time Atalanta were right around this type of position, potentially looking like they'd threaten for a Scudetto next season. So give me Atalanta to advance here, plus 105 is my best bet from the Coppa Italia. Last but not least, I'll go to looks like the French Ligue. We had a ton of matches in I guess it was all, well, there were Friday matches because these matches were rescheduled from the whatever it was called, from giving PSG and Marseille a weekend off in order to prepare for their second legs semifinals in the Champions League and Europa League. Well, didn't work out for either of them, as both of those teams ended up bowing out. Not great, but I guess happens. So now PSG go on the road to Nice, and looks like Marseille go on the road to Reims as well, in the Champagne region of France. Let me pull up this number. It's actually the first time I'll be looking at it. But yes, Nice at home to PSG and Reims at home to Marseille. So let's go into these numbers now. So I'll start. Looks like both matches are starting at the same time. I'm sure that BN Sport will not handle this very well in trying to broadcast it. Yippee-I-O. I mean, just what a horrible sports network. But trying to be more positive, but I guess LOL, it's not happening on this episode. So I'll start with Nice hosting PSG. PSG with an incredible loss at home to Toulouse this weekend, despite taking a 1-0 lead early through Kylian Mbappe. Not really sure what the status of him will be. They are trying to also, this is a preview of or I think PSG are facing Lyon in the Coupe de France final. So they should be trying to play the best football they can towards the end of the season. But Mbappe already announcing that he's leaving the club. Hasn't said Real Madrid yet, but that's what everyone thinks. That's an interesting thing to see and potentially expect. And how that really has impacted the team. There was a lot of rotation coming off of Champions League and didn't put the best foot forward or best team forward for Toulouse, but ultimately had a 1-0 lead, and that was expected to be a pretty dominant type of position to be in. Well, it didn't happen. Toulouse with a 3-1 victory, late goal to really kill anyone who was backing under there. Luckily, that was not me, though certainly was a lean of mine. In terms of the number here, so Nice, a quarter goal favorite to PSG at home. Over under is 3, juiced more heavily to under, and all the way juiced on PSG right now. Can't say I've seen PSG and underdog. I'm not really sure when the last time that was, if I have even seen it. Maybe in when Lyon were good. Nope, they were pretty much always an underdog. Maybe when Marseille were good. Nope, I think they were always an underdog, even at home. So this is wild, and I think suggests that clearly Mbappe will not be playing in this matchup. Will be playing on the weekend, and then pretty much it sounds like all backups because you want to play your best next weekend, have the full week off for the Coupe de France coming next Saturday, 2 Saturdays from now. Wow. I mean, I guess I can't help but be interested in the PSG side. I'm pretty shocked if you haven't seen my jaw. If you're watching live on YouTube, live on Twitter, or if you're watching a recorded version on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or on YouTube, you might see me picking my jaw up off the floor because I'm pretty much stupefied by this number. Total at 3, juice more to the under is a little bit lower than I made it. I'm way off on my number here, but I guess it's hard to predict that no one's going to play for PSG when you make a number like this. I mean, they were rotating this weekend, so they're just going to double rotate. Who knows what's happening here, but clearly the marketplace has taken a position that this is going to be a full Nice squad and nobody from PSG playing. Next one, we'll go to Reims, hosting Marseille. Currently, Reims a quarter goal underdog at home. Almost all the juice on Marseille on the road. Over under is 2 3/4, and it is juiced very heavily to over, which I think makes sense. Rams have not been playing well, but got a big draw on the road at Brest this week after getting no respect from the marketplace. I think close a 1 goal underdog to a team, yes, in Brest, Stade Brestois, that have been in the Champions League race, but have not been playing very well. And there is a rest advantage here because Marseille played on the weekend. I guess that also favors Nice as well, but not as much to swing that number around. My interest here, I think Rems are cheaper than I wanted them to be, and the total is below what I'd want. But I think if anything on this matchup, my biggest interest is on that Rems home underdog getting a quarter of a goal. So that will do it for the entire, I guess, midweek card from English Premier League, La Liga in Spain, Ligue 1 in France, and the Coppa Italia. I will be putting out an ultimate best bet, picking my favorites from each of those leagues. I didn't mention PSG plus a quarter of a goal. I'll put that as on my list as my biggest interest from Ligue 1. But I always chop this into a 1 minute reel on Instagram and on YouTube shorts, as those are the limits for the amount of time I can put on there. Both at the real_G Warner is the handle to go find it. Please subscribe or leave a 5-star review or do all sort of things. But it's time to get into the ultimate best bet. So let's just do it before my daily experience with a halftime report on CNBC to make sure my stocks are in the right position or going the right direction. Looking to try to add some more Netflix coming up soon, but needed probably another big pullback, which I don't think we'll get up to 10% just a week or so ago. But I guess it's time to get into it. So let's do it. This is the real_G Warner. This is the ultimate best bet from Betting the Pitch European Soccer Edition from this May 14th episode. I go through all the matches potentially to bet on in the top 5 European soccer leagues, pick my favorite from each of the countries, and then chop into 1 minute. So in case you don't want to listen to the full 40 minutes on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts, instead you can check it out here. And from the English Premier League, my best bet is Manchester United getting a quarter of a goal at home. In La Liga in Spain, I like Cadiz under 2.5 goals. In Ligue 1 in France, I like Paris Saint-Germain, a quarter goal underdog, surprisingly. And in Coppa Italia in Italy, I like in the final Atalanta plus 105 to advance. If you're not a member of my Patreon, check it out, patreon.com/real_G Warner. The best spot to get all my plays, leans, write-ups, and everything across all sports. Get the best numbers that I get. But for my best bet, I'm going to go Atalanta plus 105 to advance. I think they're in much better shape than Juventus, and I like them to win the Coppa Italia. That'll do it for this episode. Thank you for tuning in. We'll put this as quickly as possible on the various streaming platforms. You can listen to it later. But of course, if you're on Twitter at the real_G Warner, you can probably watch it over and over there if you'd like. But great talking to you all, and maybe we'll see some better officiating moving forward. God bless.